Welcome to another episode of Fabitgarage. So on this episode, we're gonna deal with the things that nobody wants to deal with other than me, because I do that for a living and I don't have a choice. We're gonna do wiring and figuring out alternator stuff, belt alignment. But we're gonna start with the wiring. So I'm gonna show you the fan setup. But before I do that, here's a radiator. I was able to drop it in the front, and it's got clearance all around. Now, on the MB, this went up, and then the sheet metal did a 45 out like that. So what I did was I bent this down, so it basically goes up and then does a 90 straight down. That way the radiator can move forward a tiny bit and gives me just enough clearance over there, which is plenty of room, because I'm not gonna have anything past where this pulley goes. My alternator is gonna be right here, and I'll talk about that I just figured out, because I thought I was going to be able to use the Ford OEM bracket, and it turns out I can't. I already have one on order, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So radiator's in. Crazy enough, I was able to reuse the Miata Radiator Support, the factory mount. And for some reason, mine had two holes. It had a hole right here. This is where the factory Miata radiator goes. You put the grommet on and the radiator lays there. Mine had the same hole on the front. And it just happened that I was like, you know what? Let me just see. I bolted these up. I took the grommet out of this back hole, put it on the front. And sure enough, it lines up perfect. So I'm not sure, but it's that straight. It's got clearance all around. And I'm going to roll with it. So I don't have to make any kind of bracket or anything. This is all done. So that kind of went nice. Now this is a Miata radiator that was upgraded when I bought the car and I got the car on the road and I was doing autocross. My radiator started leaking, so I went out and bought a dual core full aluminum radiator. So this radiator is pretty much brand new, because right after I started driving and having fun with it, I decided to pull the motor out and the car just sat, and I took the radiator out and put it in the basement, capped all the ends. So now, keep in mind that this is a dual core radiator. So it's basically two Miata radiators in one, because the Miata radiator is a single core and it's very thin. And this is thick because it's basically two Miata radiators in one. So this should be enough to cool this motor. I was actually doing some research, and apparently there are even some people that are using the stock Miata radiator to cool their small block Fords. And one guy did it on that LS1, and he says as long as you have two fans, you should have no problem. So I was like, I don't know, that seems kind of sketchy, but hey. So I did get my OEM distributor hold down, so that's in there. So the radiator should be good to cool this motor. The radiator is mounted, and I have the fans. I bought two 10-inch fans. I was gonna get black, but all they had was red. The black one was gonna be like a week and a half wait time. So I was like, I don't really have time to wait, because I kind of have to get going on this. So I bought two 10-inch fans. If you take this nut on the center off, you can flip the blade to make it into a push or a pull fan. Because obviously I don't have room over here, and I don't really want to mount the fan there anyway. I'm going to mount mine on the front, which I have plenty of room, and it's going to be a push. So air is coming this way as you're driving. The fan is going to help push air that way. So I'm going to mount the two 10-inch fans here and then wire it to the fuse box, which I already made a bracket for. And I'm reusing one of the bolts to hold it down. I already put labels on where I'm going to do what. So I got my alternator, and I'll explain to you what I have to do with the alternator and why I have a fuse here. Fuel pump, ignition coil for my distributor, and then fan 1 and 2. And the reason why I have fan 1 and 2 is because I'm going to wire them separately for two reasons. One, if the fan draws too much amperage and I only have one harness sharing both of those fans, I don't want it to burn a wire or burn a relay and then have it overload that wiring kit. So I'm going to wire them separate with two relays, but I'm only going to use one switch. and I'll show you what I mean. Actually, let me show you the kit right here. So because I'm not going to be using an ECU anymore, and the ECU was what controlled the fan on this, move this out of the way. So I have, don't worry about all those wiring diagrams here. So you basically buy a kit, it comes with a switch. So basically this is a 185, I believe. Yeah, 185. So when you put this on my case, is an intake manifold where the coolant is going to be running through. When this reaches 185 degrees, it'll ground and send ground to whatever's connected here, which is the wiring harness, and that's going to activate the fans. Once the fans are on, it'll cool the engine down to 175 from 185. Once it hits 175, this here will lose its ground, it will shut off, and the fans will shut off. So 185, 175, within that 10 degrees, it's going to turn fans on and off. So keep in mind the Miata Radiator, not only it's a single core, but it's also pretty much one fan, because the water fan is for AC. So on a regular day-to-day, unless you're getting really hot, you wouldn't get both fans, you would only get one anyway. So running 2 fans at full speed and a dual core radiator should be plenty cooling for this, hopefully. So I'm gonna wire those 2 separate. I bought 2 kits. That way, one fan can pull all it wants from one harness. The other fan can do the same, but they will share a switch. And so when this gives ground, it'll give ground to both harnesses, both relays, both fans will come on. The reason why I want to do it that way is because so I have an extra switch too. I'm gonna have one of these on the shelf. If this goes bad and the fans start not coming on, then I have a good, well, hopefully it's good. I'll have a brand new switch in stock that I can just throw on there and go on my way. And the second reason is if somehow the relay stops working or gets stuck or a wire melts, something happens, I have at least the other one should be running. So I don't lose both fans if something's wrong with one harness, which will make it not overheat as fast. So let's say if I'm almost home and one of these shits the bed, at least I'll have one fan going. I should be okay to make it home. So it's kind of a safety, just you have two. You don't want to overload. There are people that ran 2 fans on one harness and they're like, yeah, I have no problems, but you never know. You don't want to overload the wiring harness and then have it give you issues. So I'm gonna run that once I mount the fans to the front. So yeah, this is for the cooling system. I think we're all set. I already bought, I already put the switch in there, and they tell you not to put Teflon tape because you need the threads of the switch to ground to the intake when your temperature reaches. So I just put a little bit of RTV on the top of the threads. That way when I screwed it down and it started to get tight, that's when I put the RTV and then tighten a little more, and that'll seal the top, but the bottom is all thread to thread, making a good connection. And then I'll put a little bit of silver paint around on top of that black silicone just to make it look a little better. But that should be fine there. So the cooling system should be pretty much all set other than the hoses, which I bought silicone radiator hoses for Fox body pretty much. They seem to be the right shape. They are long enough where I can pretty much trim them and make them a little smaller to reach my radiator. So I should be able to have these 2 hoses here in silicone, which I really like silicone compared to regular hose. And then the upper and lower radiator hose, I should be able to trim it and make it a little shorter and make it work. So hopefully that's the case. It should be here in a day or 2. Hopefully once the hoses are in and the radiator fans are on, the cooling system is pretty much almost complete other than wiring it. And then I'm gonna actually run a switch on my switch panel that I ordered inside the car. So I can, if the car starts to overheat and somehow the switch here fails or it doesn't realize that the engine's that hot, I have a manual override switch that I can turn both fans at full blast. So it's always good to have that extra safety just in case something happens. You never know. I mean, this is genuine Chinese. It could be good for 10 years. It could be crap day 2. So if I have a manual switch, I can just bypass it. Fans will kick on. That's assuming the Chinese fans turn on, but that's a whole nother set of problems. But yeah, so cooling system is taken care of. Now I'm gonna show you guys what I've learned with the alternator. All right, let's talk alternator. So when I bought this motor, this bracket and this alternator came with my motor. This is actually, it's free, and it probably is fine, but I'm not gonna use it. I actually bought a brand new 3G alternator, which came on the 94 to 2000 Mustangs. It's a way better alternator. It's 130 amps, and it pretty much is 99% bolt-on. You just have to modify the corner of the bracket. But anyway, so I was like, well, I already have the bracket. I'll mount the alternator to it and then bolt it right to the head. Well, let me show you what I found out. So, good thing I did not spend an hour sandblasting that bracket and painting it to make it look pretty, because it turns out that I can't use it. And you guys are gonna see why here. So I'm gonna actually zoom in a tiny bit. I'm gonna put it right there for you guys. And watch what happens. That bracket bolts to the 2 holes on the head, well, the 3 holes on the head. And watch what happens when I put it on here. So if I line it up right about there, wow, radiator hose is pointing right at the pulley. That's great. So that's out of the picture. So I ended up doing some research last night, and turns out that there's a company out there that makes a bracket to mount the alternator lower. So instead of having the alternator up here, it'll be right down here, which will leave me all this room here just to do my hose from here to here. So I contacted the company. I sent them a picture of my setup. They're like, yep, we have exactly what you need. It mounts lower. It keeps your serpentine belt, same size belt, so you don't have to worry about it. I can have it shipped to you in the morning. I was like, great. Sent him the payment, and he's shipping me a whole bracket kit with all the right spacers and bolts and everything. So once I get that in, hopefully I won't be hitting the frame rail or anything like that. I might have to trim this depending how far the alternator comes, but we'll play it by ear. We'll play it by ear when we get there. So alternator is already ordered. Pigtail for the alternator is already ordered. I will order the belt. I actually ordered a tensioner pulley because this bracket here is missing the pulley, but it turns out I'm not going to be needing a tensioner because the bracket for the alternator to mount it low already has one of those adjustment rods, and that's what puts tension on the belt. So I'm not going to be running a belt tensioner. So I know this is all boring stuff, but this is all things that when you swap something like a V8 into a random car, this is all stuff that you're gonna have to deal with. And unfortunately, there are not a lot of videos on YouTube of people actually explaining how to do it, why they're doing it. They just say, hey, I did it. I want to be able to show you guys exactly what I'm doing as much as I can, just so you guys have a better understanding. And if there are a couple of people that are doing the same exact swap that bought the kit, it should help them out a lot. If you have an NB at least. So the alternator for the 3G alternator upgrade from Ford on the NA, you can find a ton of information online how to hook up the wires to the Ford plug to make it work. But for the NB, it doesn't seem that anybody knows how to hook it up. There was actually one guy that I found, and he basically just did a NB to NA alternator conversion. That's what I use as far as figuring out which wires go where. The problem with the NB2, like mine, is the 2 wires from the alternator goes to the engine control module, goes to the engine computer. Because I'm not going to be running that computer anymore, I have to figure it out. So I got the wiring diagram, I studied it, I figured out what each wire did, and I was able to come up with a plan to bypass the engine computer and have those 2 wires, one goes to the fuse box and the other one loop right back into the alternator. So I'll explain to you once I actually have the alternator mounted and I have all the pigtail. I'll show you which wire goes where. That should apply to all NBs. Probably NB1, I think, is the same wiring. NB1s and NB2s. So once the alternator is on, All I have to do is really fabricate a pulley to take place of the power steering. That way I can put the belt on, it'll charge, it'll have an idler pulley there instead of a power steering pump because I'm running the manual rack for now. But I am probably gonna switch it to power steering once this is pretty much done and inspected and basically data driven. To get it on the road, I'm gonna keep the manual rack. So I'm waiting for the alternator. I'm waiting for a bunch of parts. All I've had so far delivered is the fan and the fan kit, so I can work on that. But like I said, guys, every week it's no longer going to be a ton of, oh, I did this, because now this comes the annoying part of figuring things out. So bear with me. I know it's going to get boring, but this people need to know this, because if people just do this on their own time and they don't show other people how they did it, and anytime you go online and you research it, you're not going to find it. I spent a lot of time researching how to figure out what alternator I need, and then how to mount it so it doesn't hit the frame rail. It's a lot of work. So if I can save someone else's time, that'll work for me. So I'm gonna get to installing these fans now, and then I'm gonna run the wires to the switch and to the aftermarket fuse box that I got here. That's fan 1 and 2, and we're gonna keep going. All right, so I have the fans pretty much installed. I just have to tighten them up. I have the pigtails hanging on the bottom. I am going to cut these cheaper connectors. They're not really waterproof. And I have some male-female connectors that I can splice in there, and it will be waterproof. So they're on there. I put them on the side and left the center open so the way fresh air can come in here. So for those of you who are not familiar with this, never installed an aftermarket fan, they send you the zip ties. So let me see if I can show you through here. So you can actually poke a zip tie right through where these cooling fins are, the wavy up and down. It'll go right through. It will not damage your radiator. Your water actually flows on these bars here. See the bars coming down? That's where your water is. So you don't want to damage that. But right in the center, anywhere in between one of these little fins, you can poke it all the way through. So you want to put they send you these little double-sided foam. One has a peel tape for sticky side, one smooth. So I like to put the smooth side towards the radiator. That way, if one day you have to replace the fan, this is not fused to the fins. It'll just come right out. So I usually put the sticky side towards the outside. So as you see here, sticky side towards the outside. Then you're gonna peel the sticky tape off, and they send you these little discs. And all you gotta do is peel that off. I'll actually show you. Let me mount the camera real quick and I'll show you. Okay, so I'm gonna do this one here. So basically just come here, remove the tape. Make sure you can pull. The flat side goes towards the radiator. And the reason why you want that is because you don't want hard plastic digging into your fins or your aluminum radiator and damaging it. So you're gonna put this here. It won't come out again. You're gonna push it all the way down. Once it bottoms out, you're gonna hold this and you're gonna do one last click. Now, this is secure. That's no longer gonna come out, and you can just come here and trim it, and your fan will be secured. If one day you have to remove this, you will have to cut this off and replace with a new one. So I'm gonna do this to all of them. I already did these two here. And then I'm just gonna do the wiring. All right, so as you can see, I cut off those cheap connectors and I added an actual connector that has silicone seal on it. That way it'll be waterproof. And even where the wires go, it's got the yellow silicone seal on it. So you can basically just go online and type in male, female connector set, and it comes with pretty much both sides, all the pins and all the little seals. All you need to have is one of these pliers to actually crimp that style. So I'm gonna do this side now, and then I'm gonna add the female version of that connector to the harness, and then this will be plug and play. I'll be able to just plug it in, and if I need to remove the radiator, obviously, if I take out the radiator, I won't be able to take out the fans without replacing the zip ties. So I'll just unplug the two fans and take out as one unit. So I'm gonna keep going on this. So I made some decent progress. I got both of the connectors set. Now I fabricated a bracket to hold both my relays for fan 1, fan 2, or vice versa. I still have to figure out which one's which. I got a nice bracket going there. It's got comes out, there's a hold down, and then wrapped in nice OEM looking tape. The two wires coming out of the relay goes through this grommet that I drilled on the side here, and they're gonna receive the plugs that are gonna plug the fans in. The other wires go right here, and they're gonna go right into the fuse box with two 10-amp fuses. So when I turn the key on, the relays receive power, and all they do is they wait for the ground from the switch to turn the fan on. And I'm gonna have a switch in line with it, a manual switch, so I can flip the switch in case this fails. I can give it manual ground and the fans will come on. So that's what this little black wire here is. This black wire is gonna connect to the switch. So that's my ground, and that's pretty much it. This is the wiring diagram for this kit. I didn't really follow it because I'm gonna do it my own way. If you do not have experience with wiring, automotive wiring, and how to get your powers and grounds, then follow this. I'm so used to doing this, I'm just gonna do it my way because I know it'll work. I'm not gonna be using this circuit breaker because these no-brand ones tend to fail a lot. So that's why I'm just gonna use fuses instead, and I'm just gonna carry spare fuses in case something does happen. I'll just pop a new fuse in. I don't really trust these no-name circuit breakers, so I basically just bypass the circuit breaker. Another thing I don't like to do is have a hot wire all the time. I do not want my relay to have power all the time, even though I don't have the ground signal. I do not want power all the time because when I turn my key off, I want everything off. I don't want anything staying on. If this relay, if the black wire somehow shaves through and gets ground, this relay is gonna be stuck on. The fan's gonna be stuck on. That's gonna kill your battery. So the way I like to roll is turn the key off, everything's off. I don't care what it is. So that's why I'm doing my own wiring the way I wanna do it. So yeah, guys, it's a lot of work to do wiring. I guess we did okay this week. We mounted the radiator. That's all done. We mounted the fans. We installed the fuse box on that side. And we figured out everything we need for the alternator and the bracket. So the alternator and the bracket should be here this weekend. So I'll put that on. And hopefully on the next video, I should have the fans all wired up, ready to go. And I should be making a video on alternator install and how I'm gonna fabricate this pulley here to pretend that it's power steering, because I do need an idler here so that I can use a regular length belt. So we're getting there, and soon enough we should be running and driving this thing on the road. So just stay tuned for the next updates. I know it's gonna get boring because this is the stuff no one wants to deal with, but if you don't know it, you have to learn. That is the crucial part of building your own car or fixing your own car. You have to get familiar with wiring and get familiar with doing your own work. So if something happens, you're not left stranded. So thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, share with your friends. If you have any questions, just message me or drop a comment, and we'll see you guys on the next one.